Welcome to the Content Strategy Interviews podcast. Each week, we talk with accomplished content strategy experts to share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 24 of the Content Strategy Interviews podcast. I've got with us today Steve Broback and Jason Preston. They're the co-founders of the Dent Conference, which is a conference all about innovation and community and putting a dent in the universe, being a positive force for change in the world. I'll let each of them talk a little bit about their background and how they came to become involved in the Dent Conference. So, Steve, let's start with you.
Cool. Thanks, Larry. So I'm a longtime tech conference producer. That was sort of in my previous life, starting in the early 90s. My business partner, Steve Roth, and I produced the world's first PageMaker conference, then the world's first Photoshop conference. And then we started moving very heavily into web design and web advertising in the mid 90s, which was good timing. And those events were largely instructional in nature, but of course there was a strong sense of community around them as well. And we'd get anywhere from 300 to 1,400 people in a room together for several days. We sold that company in late '99, early 2000, and then after a couple of years of waiting for my non-compete to run out, I started to do conferences again. Blog Business Summit 2005, world's first Twitter conference 2009, which morphed into these events called the Tweet House, which was held Sundance Film Festival, South by Southwest. It was during that era, starting with the Blog Business Summit, was when Jason and I started working together. And for years, we kept bouncing this idea back and forth about a different kind of event that's not so tech focused. And we actually, about 2 years, I think, we just kept throwing ideas off each other. And then the catalyst for making it happen was the death of Steve Jobs. He passed away, and I think we come into the office the next day and both of us had the same idea. What about this Dent the Universe theme? That fits.
Nice. Because that goes back to that Steve Jobs quote. I forget the exact quote.
We're here to make a dent in the universe. Why else? Sorry, Jason, you remember the specifics. And there's debate over whether it's ding or dent. It's a little ambiguous.
Yeah, as best I can tell, it's we're here to put a dent in the universe. Why else even be here?
Be here, yeah.
That's the one I think, as far as I can tell, that's the most well-cited version.
Right.
That was the sort of getting to where personally where I am now, and then I'll let Jason tell his half of the story.
Yeah. I've always been a little bit entrepreneurial, to the point that when I was in elementary school, me and my friends started a company called, in air quotes, called Andrew, Jason, Eric Smythe, AGES Software. And we were making, of course, little games in QBasic, and we actually tried to buy a little game company that our friends in elementary school were using to make calculator games, like TA83 games. We had all these convoluted schemes for it. So that the whole entrepreneurial thing has been part of my, background for a long time. And in addition, it's I didn't grow up having much interest in, pop culture celebrities. I never really cared what was in, E-Weekly or whatever else there was. But I did always have a fascination with greatness. What is it that allows people to sort of rise up to a particular challenge or moment, take hold of something and really excel and change the course of history? And denting the universe is kind of a great way to capture that. Just that idea that you're doing something significant, meaningful, that is going to have an impact. And it's not necessarily just running a business or selling a business, or you could be Marie Curie and dent the universe. You could be J.K. Rowling and dent the universe. And so it was this wonderful way to capture that. And also, we think that a lot of the most interesting stuff happens at the intersection of two or more different disciplines. And you can dent the universe in a whole bunch of different fields. You can dent the universe in cancer science. You can dent the universe in space exploration. You can dent the universe in literature. You can dent the universe in business. You can dent the universe in leadership. And when you bring those different, often siloed groups together, you end up with some really fascinating new stuff. And so I've found the topic, and I still do, fascinating. And I find the people that we managed to bring together for this equally fascinating. And so yeah, that's what keeps me going on Dent, and why it's just such a wonderful, for me, just a bottomless topic.
Right. Well, what I'd love to talk about mostly today is so you have the really good, clear stories of like the organizational and operational expertise maybe that Steve brings, and the vision that you both share about this putting a dent in the universe, and your sort of focus on greatness and how to cultivate that and get more of it in the world. I forget which of you, I watched a couple of interviews and read a bunch of stuff about each of you. Probably, I can't remember who it was, but somebody talked about if you could create even one more Steve Jobs every century, mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's I've been I remember when we were talking to the one of the first things we did was we went around and talked to people who we thought, we sort of recruited an advisory board, which to this day it's evolved. Some people have left and some people are still there, and it's a wonderful resource for us in terms of what are the topics and speakers and for each event. Mm-hmm. And we went out to talk to a bunch of folks who we knew who would make great advisory board members, and that was one of the things that I said over and over again to them. It's like, hey, look, imagine the leverage here, right? If we can move the needle on this, if there's one more Jobs in a century, if there's one more Tesla or J.K. Rowling, or pick your poison. It's a point of huge leverage. It's really cool.
It's also if you can take 100 or 1,000 people and have them each get nudged a little bit more further in what they're trying to accomplish. It can be more of a diffuse accomplishment as well. And I think that's quite a bit of the feedback we're receiving from the folks that are members of the community and come to the event every year, is that there's this sense of recharging their batteries and helping to move them forward, in maybe not, to make them Steve Jobs, but to get them, further their aims on a more micro level, I guess would be the phrase.
Right. Well, that makes, I totally hear that. And I think that's, that the diverse or the more dispersed inspiration that comes out of it. But let me ask you about, so it started with a conference, I think it was 2013 was the first one, and you put together a slate of speakers and other, well, tell me about the content of the first Dent. Like, what kind of speakers you had together? Did you have a theme? How did it come together, and what were you hoping to convey to people?
I want to let Steve tell you about themes.
Oh, yeah. So, well, we had our board was very influential in this conversation about themes, because we heard two different opposing views, and I believe one of them is definitely the winning view. One is that we were, by some of our more experienced conference goers, people that had been to all sorts of thought leadership events, one person said, oh yeah, you really want to have a theme because it helps sort of make everybody aware of what's going to happen. It's easier for them to maybe it drives them better to buying a ticket. It's more information, and it makes an event resonate better. Okay. Then the other person said, yeah, the problem is, the themes, the speakers, tend to not always align, and then it's sort of forced, and usually what happens is after the event's over, that's when you know what the theme is. And our attitude is, while we were lucky because the first event, it's like, oh, well, it's an event about denting the universe. Okay, so that's the theme, dent the universe. We didn't have to really dig down much deeper than that. And we did have these editorial pillars that we believed, each, a session should align to one of those, like, team and alchemy and etc. Jason's got them memorized better than I do, because I'm a little more.
I can usually do 5 out of 6. But it's not the same 5.
Yeah.
But so what we concluded, because we sort of tried a theme the second year, and then I started going to other conferences where I could see when they had a theme, generally the speaker would get up on stage, talk about whatever it was they wanted to talk about, and then they would say, so this year's theme is radishes, and here's why my talk on jet engines or rocket engines, this is why it's radish oriented. It's like, yeah, okay, that doesn't work. And so like we tend to let the theme emerge. Like one year it was failure. That was okay, that's clearly the theme. And so anyway, we feel better. I just said, when people ask, it's like, okay, what's the theme this year? And I'm like, making a dent in the universe is the theme.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go back to those pillars, because was that the guiding force for how you decided which speakers to go after and how to organize the programming?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's fair to say. There's sort of, in my mind, there's a, what do you call it, a cross, there's they're one side of the equation, and then you can cross it with another filter, and you kind of get to where we're going. But it's vision. Let me see if I can do all 6. Vision, people, process,
design,
focus, design, and alchemy. And basically we thought these were, important aspects of denting the universe. And, when you look at an organization or a person and you kind of dig into it, we just wanted to start there. In fact, the first thing we called those was starting points. Mm-hmm. And that's a theme that goes through like a lot of the Dent stuff, is this idea that what's on stage are conversation starters. The whole experience is designed around creating more intimate moments for the people who are there, and finding ways to take a conversation from this bizarre almost setting of like, here's a person who's talking to a room full of people they know and don't know, and it's sort of one way-ish, and turn that into a more organic interaction that can lead to a relationship, can lead to a new idea, and so on. And also, so there's the go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, also remember those initial 6 themes mapped very closely to sort of the Jobsian notion, the whole design thing. That's why I specifically called it out, is, that was one of his core strengths. So we sort of tried to map to that to a significant degree. Also, when you have those 6, it really does give you a lot of flexibility in what you're gonna talk about, who's going to be on stage. When we talked earlier about facilitating people making their dent, this whole making connections between people, and this thread of what we call, and what is generally called combinatorial creativity. What we're learning is that connecting the people at the event so that they can do cool things together is really important to moving forward that whole make a dent theme. And that's why when Jason talks about sessions being conversation starters, that's something we're more and more driven to do.
Hey, I want to go back to that a little bit, because I think, I can't remember where I read this, but I thought that early on you had sort of like, not conventional, obviously it's a truly unique conference, but sort of ideas about having the conference be mostly about the programming. But you almost immediately realized that you had a community on your hands. And I'm just curious how quickly that unfolded, like how soon you went from, this is not just really about the content is really just the sourdough starter for the conversation in the hallway afterward.
That's so funny, because the first one ended. We had 100 people, and there was after 20 years of producing tech conferences, there was this hum and this level of engagement and excitement when the event was over, and everyone was saying how much they wanted to stay in touch and do more events together and hang out more. And I said to Jason after it was over, I said, well, that was weird. in a great way. I'm like, that was really unusual. I haven't experienced that. I mean, to some degree you always do, but not to that level. And I said, wow, I don't think we're going to see that happen again. And then the next year it was same exact thing, if not more so.
Except more. Yeah.
And that for me, I was like, okay, that was not an anomaly. And that is clearly maybe the primary reason that people are coming and being involved in this group. So I think for me, it was sort of year 2 was when I went, okay, I think there has to be a sort of a fundamental change in our thinking. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Jason would agree with that or not, but
yeah. What do you think, Jason?
I mean, I think that's accurate in terms of timing. I think it's probably fair to say that, we started with the intent of creating a forum where we could explore the practical lessons about putting a dent in the universe. And rather than say that we've taken the content and put it on the back burner, I think it's probably more accurate to say we've diversified what we want to do on stage. Mm-hmm. The first year, most of the sessions, and by the way, we don't do panels. And the reason that I like to say that a panel is like a PowerPoint. You can do a good one, but you probably won't. And when they're not good, they are a waste of everyone's time. They're a waste of the people who are on stage. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of the time of the people in the room. It's like, why'd you do it? Mm-hmm. And so we avoid that entirely. And we've gone from, having sessions which are by and large, instructional or about extracting a particular piece of advice and conveying that to the audience. And we've expanded that now to have more sessions that are quirky, unusual, designed to draw a connection from, a totally different industry or a totally different field into yours. The first year we had one talk that was like that. And it was the most popular talk we've ever had. And it was by our magician, Eugene Burgers, who was, one of the top close-up magicians in the world. Came out late. Yes, he's no longer with us. And I think it's still maybe our highest rated talk we've ever had at Dent. Well, and we sort of took that to heart and said, there are things that people can learn from things that are outside of their particular, a peek into the story of somebody or something in a different world from theirs can be not only inspiring, but instructional if done right. And so I think that, I just want to reframe it from, it's not that we started with this idea that we would do good content and we've now decided to focus on something else. I think we've picked up a new thread and expanded what we do, but we still care very deeply about what we put on stage and that it provides value to people in the room.
Right. We do, because we don't do panels, but we do. So it's speakers alone on stage and it's fireside chats.
Yeah.
And Fireside Chats, of course, those are often, tend to be well received, partially because there's a type of session we avoid now, besides just panels, is the over choreographed, scripted presentation that there's other events that will remain nameless that, those types of talks. We ended up with one a couple years ago, and it was not what people didn't really like it as much compared to the other sessions. Another oddball session we did, which really was very well received by the audience, was we had Mark Duncan, a consulting detective, who came on and talked about lie detection and some of his stories about
or Mandy Ray.
Our free diver Mandy Ray Cruikshank.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting to me, both at a number of levels. That it sounds like a lot of both. There's a lot of emergent thinking at Dent, that like the way you talked about letting a theme emerge after the fact from those pillars. You sort of have these conceptual pillars that you build things around, and then the theme emerges. And then these, even like sort of the design of the content and the sessions, emerges from what you see works, what you see doesn't work. Or you just, I'm getting from this that you're just constantly paying attention, listening. I can't remember, how actively do you solicit feedback from the attendees and the speakers about their experience, or what's the mechanism by which you're doing this ongoing iteration?
We've always done a formal survey. It's like, click this link and tell us what you thought. And in the past, for most of the events, we've let the attendees rate every single presenter, separately. We did a little different this year, which was, okay, what was your favorite, who was your favorite speaker? Which, because, they always have the problem of the survey's too long, people don't take it. So we've done that sort of formal thing, and we always look at the data that results, and that's always a pretty solid indicator of what worked great and what didn't work so great. And then, of course, there is the purely sort of anecdotal, because it's not a gigantic conference. There's only a few hundred people there. And because we have a very solid board that is not shy about letting us know how they felt and what they heard. Then we have those 2 points. We have the data that comes in from the surveys, and then the rather large anecdotal response we get. And between those two, I think that's pretty informative.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. Going back to, you guys have a super clear vision that drives us at the top level. You have good methods at that level for measuring how things are going. But as a business, a lot of content strategy is about like right content in front of the right people at the right time to achieve your organizational goals. And usually there's a financial goal, without divulging your whole P&L or anything. But I'm just like, and whether money might not even be an object. Like,
wait, what is this financial goal you speak of?
Exactly. Well, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like,
who does this?
Yeah. No, I guess that's kind of
So I'm actually really excited about something that's changed in the past just couple months. So, I mean, it's funny to relate it to the question about how long did it take you to realize it's a community. When we started, it was, as a business, we're a conference. So we'll do this, and we'll ask people to give us their time, attention, and money, register for the conference, and come out and be part of it. And that worked. And the challenge was that people wanted to get together throughout the year, and so we kept throwing things in. We started doing dinners. We had some sponsors who came up and said, "Hey, we'd really like to, engage with these folks throughout the year." And so, Buick, for example, sponsored some really wonderful experiences that we did throughout the year. But we also just started doing them because they were fun. And then we got in this weird spot where we had all this fun stuff that we're putting on the calendar that was eating into our ability to, I don't want to phrase it that way, but it was just, we kept trying to find out how could we do these things that we're doing that are fun, that are engaging, that support the community, that help people create relationships, connect throughout the year. And how do we turn that into, it keeps the lights on? And we thought, well, we went through like, a bunch of iterations on how do we get it so that people who are coming to these things will, come and sign up for the conference, because that's ultimately how we get paid. But what we did this past year is we introduced something called Dent Passport, which is just this wonderful freeing jujitsu move where now we get to serve that community directly, because somebody can sign up for a Dent Passport. And that takes a whole bunch of friction out of these sort of events throughout the year. We've got a bunch of them that are just really cool experiences. Like we're going with an astronaut down to we're going to dive down underwater to an underwater research facility that is used by NASA to train astronauts for their time on the International Space Station. And this astronaut, she's going to tell us about how that training works and how it prepares you for life on the space station. And we've got some social experiences built around it. And so like we do that kind of thing. And we've got a bunch of them throughout the year, and some other resources for people who want to stay engaged throughout the year. And then that lets us, it frees us to go, yeah, we can just do these cool things because they're cool. And it adds to the value of, being a real active member of this community and having a passport. Right. And we still, the conference will be back in 2019 and people will be able to sign up for that. But if you don't have, I can count, there's, a dozen people who are part of the Dent community in my mind, who didn't come to Dent this last year, but they've been, a bunch of prior years, and they didn't come last year this year. One of them in particular had a baby being born, like within a week or so of the event. Another one had like a month-long sort of lifetime opportunity in Chile. Another person had a planned surgery. It's like, so these things happen. And when you change the definition of Dent from it's a conference to, this is a community that is connected through experiences throughout the year. It's like, oh yeah, well, I can't go to the conference, but I'm still a Denter, and
we just got back from a conference at Harvard Business School that a bunch of us Denters were out at, which included a tour of the MIT Media Lab while we were in town. We last year did kind of an odd coincidence. So it turns out Jason and I grew up in the same neighborhood. I mean, almost a stone's throw away from each other, obviously at different times. But we're also big fans of magic, which is why we had our magician, at the first conference. And but we did a dinner at the Magic Castle in LA and Hollywood this year for Dent community members. So anyway, it's a lot of very unique, different kinds of events. And there's no formal editorial or the content at all those. Obviously, the Harvard event, there was lots of content, but so it's it's more about the interactions between the community members at most of those.
Well,
we have dinner speakers too.
One last thing on that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just because I'm so excited about this little detail is that, we were setting this up and we thought, okay, well, how many are we think we're gonna get? We think, oh, we'll have a few. We'll have 30 or so people sign up. And we launched it and we had more than 70 people sign up in the first 30 days, which was just, more than double what we thought. And as we keep talking to people, it's compelling. And I think so I'm excited for where it's going.
That's good. I want to point out, we're coming up on time, and all of a sudden I'm realizing I want to have a whole other conversation with you guys about because a lot of what we've just been talking about, a lot of like publishers and like in the past month or two, I've talked with Todd Bishop at GeekWire here in Seattle, and they do a lot of their revenue and a lot of their community engagement comes from events that they produce. You guys are event producers and kind of coming back, and then the tie-in with you is about community. So this idea of content, community, and events all kind of circling around one another. I'd love to come back to that at some point. But hey, right now I want to ask you just before we wrap up, is there anything that we haven't talked about that kind of in the event strategy world or just in general that is on either of your minds that you'd like to share with folks while we got your attention?
In that general zone, one thing that is baked into the DNA of Dent, and that I believe very strongly, is that people's lives are driven by moments, powerful moments, a conversation, a really great it's 2 a.m. kind of a conversation often, and so that's something that we aim for, and it's usually more powerful with fewer people involved. And so all kinds of things that we do intentionally around the experiences that we design is, we take advantage of the psychological tendency for people to like. You're more likely to be vulnerable with somebody who has a visual symbol of likeness with you. And so we give everybody a jacket every year at Dent, and it's the same jacket. It's the same cut, same style, and maybe it's it comes in a variety of colors, but you've got this symbol of community that everybody can see, and it helps us get to vulnerability faster, and it helps us to take things like typically you have a big conference dinner, and there are some conferences that are in the same family as Dent, in terms of it's about inspiration and big things and all that. That they're famous for having like one giant dinner with a table that's 3,000 feet long, and it's like that's awesome and that's fun. But we go the exact opposite way. It's like we take, instead of doing a big conference dinner, we split the group into smaller portions of and take them out to restaurants where we have good wine and good food, and you can end up in I believe much deeper conversation, just because the context is right for it. And so it's sort of, I guess my point is that I think context, when you're thinking about events and content in the scope of an experience, I think the context you put people in is really important for how that is received and processed.
Nice.
And that's just something we pay a lot of attention to.
Great, thanks. And Steve,
I want to throw in this thing that we've been sort of banging our spoon on the high chair for several years now. And it's funny because, again, Jason and I sort of encountered this thing separately, and then together we realized we were talking to sort of the same people. For the last 5 years, I've been helping produce some panels and talks on tech and science at San Diego Comic-Con. And because of that, I've gotten a chance to know some of the folks at NASA that regularly speak. One is Jason Cruzan. And while Jason spent a year at Harvard a couple years ago, he got to know Kareem Lakhani, professor at Harvard. And it turns out the two of them, both Kareem and Jason Cruzan, worked together on a project on research regarding crowdsourcing innovation. And what they discovered was that, quote, non-traditional participants, unquote, tend to provide extreme outcomes in terms of innovation. That means typically the best results, the best innovations often come from non-traditional participants. So we are constantly striving to get people in a room together and under this context that are from unique and varied and not connected environments, in the hopes that together they can make some magic happen. So anyway, that's one of the phrases I'd like to have resonating through people's heads, is this whole non-traditional participants thing.
I love that. That's I do a lot of work. I do work in the WordPress community on diversity and inclusion, and the benefits are just so clear to everybody now. And you guys are doing that at Dent. Well,
since 2013. Speaking of that, the first time we hosted an event, we've had 50% or more of our speaker roster is female every year. And in fact, we're in the Gender Avenger Hall of Fame. there's an award.
They're awesome.
No.
Yeah, they track conferences. We just all of a sudden we're getting this traffic, and it's from this awesome site, Gender Avenger.
Gender Avenger, I love that. I'm going to have to look those guys up. Well, thanks so much, you guys. I really enjoyed this. And like I said, I'd like to hold out the opportunity of revisiting some of this stuff. You inspired me with a bunch of other questions. So
awesome.
But thanks for
so
today.
this is a good conversation starter then.
Yes.
Right on.
Thanks, you guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for another content strategy interview.